Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. I'm your host, George Elek, and today we have a special episode. We're not necessarily previewing the weekend's racing or a festival, but we have a special guest that we are going to interview, trainer Jamie Snowden. We're going to talk to Jamie about his runners over the next week or so and look ahead to the Cheltenham Festival and the Grand National and Aintree too. Jamie, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. First and foremost, and most importantly, it's been a pretty tricky couple of months, pretty tricky year. How's everything your end?
Hi, George. Well, thank you for having me on, and delighted it's a special edition. I'm not quite so sure what's so special about it, but listen, I'm privileged to be on the show. But listen, no, things are fine down here. Thankfully, as we all know, in these kind of strange and weird times that we live in, if you're able to work and able to get out, we're very lucky. So thankfully everyone's fit and healthy, and long may that continue.
Yeah, it's disappointing for me that we're having to do this over Zoom, because this time of year is normally when me and producer Liam travel around the country, going to trainers' yards, having a great time chatting about horses ready for the crux of the season. But sadly, we're not side by side. We're having to do this over Skype. I mean, what's it been like as a trainer during COVID? I mean, what's it been like at the yards? What precautions are you having to take? What's it like going to race days, going to race courses without fans? It must be, very, very different.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose let's rewind the clock and go back to that fateful day in March after the Cheltenham Festival, when really the rug was pulled from all of our feet, and we were told there was going to be no racing, as of tomorrow, and that was a weird time, and quite nerve-wracking. We didn't quite know whether we could transport horses, how we could do it. It was all up in the air, and we were in the process of having our best season to date, and we were on 46 winners, and we had horses ready to run in the Grand National, and everything was really flying for us. It was a wonderful season, and to go from that to no racing tomorrow for the foreseeable future was a scary moment, I think is probably fair to say. And anyway, thankfully everyone sort of came through it, and we worked our way around it, and furloughed most of our staff, and thankfully come July we were back up and going, and jump racing was continuing, and or resuming, should I say, and we slowly sort of got ourselves back to a position where we could operate fully, and thankfully we hit the ground nicely this time round, and we've had a good few winners on the board and graded winners, and things are looking up. But it's certainly very strange not having owners in the yard the whole time, and owners of the races. But as I said earlier, we are just lucky that elite sport can continue, and we're one of those lucky people that can carry on.
Well, certainly that's the case for the time being. I don't know if you've seen, but there have been some rumours over the last week or so about the possibility of there being a pause in racing. That the BHA have come out and said that racing continues this week, and seem to want to quash those rumours very quickly. Are there any rumours circulating within the trainers' ranks, or any trainers' WhatsApp groups you're in where you're all talking about whether or not it's all going to stop, or as far as does the show go on for the time being?
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously scary on Sunday evening when all the sort of social media channels were coming out with all these various rumours, as you said. But I sit on the National Trainers Committee, and we had a Zoom call yesterday, and certainly the BHA have heard from DCMS that racing will continue, and elite sport is set to continue. So thankfully, none of those rumours seem to have any legs, and long may that continue, and let's keep going.
Absolutely, let's keep going, and we're going to go straight into this weekend's racing, I should say, where you've got a couple of interesting runners. We're going to start with Katilli Briggs, who steps up to 3 miles again on a Saturday at Warwick in what looks like a pretty handy race, if we're going to be honest. Looking at the betting now, Next Destination is the 2-1 favourite ahead of Happy Go Lucky at 3s, Dicky Diver 9-2, Fiddler on the Roof 5-1, If the Cap Fits 5-1. I mean, there are some kind of decent horses in there at the top end of the market, but Katilli Briggs goes in decent form, stepping back up and trip again. Do you go there hopeful, and do you go there expecting, this is, I think, the third time at this distance, the last two at Cheltenham, that the longer trip will suit.
Yeah, certainly he's. I mean, he was a very good novice hurdler last year. Again, let's go back a couple of seasons. He came out of the pointing field where he ran in a very good race, and he actually beat Shiskin back in his pointing. So he came to us. He's obviously by fame and glory out of a sister to Bala Briggs, who obviously won the Grand National. So stamina was always going to be his sort of trump card, as it were. But last season we ran him first time out in a bumper, and then he obviously progressed through the novice hurdle ranks and won a couple of times and was third in a grade 2 at Cheltenham. We ran him in the Albert Bartlett, the Albert Bartlett last year, and poor chap, he came back with colic that evening. He really wasn't right straight after the race, and he ended up being in hospital that night, and he had to undergo 2 colic surgeries, which certainly was far from ideal, and certainly he didn't give his running in the Albert Bartlett, and no doubt that's the reason why. We gave him plenty of cover, and he came out this year. Obviously the plan was always to go novice chasing. We dropped him back to 2 miles in a graduation chase at Carlisle, where he ran a lovely race, finished second, staying on all the way up the hill, and then we dropped him in the deep end in a grade 2 at Ascot, and he finished third in that. And again, he ran a cracking race. Obviously Dory, who won the Betfair hurdle, was in behind, and that was a very good race as well. So he's been performing with plenty of credit. The step up to 3 miles on Saturday promises to suit him, but naturally, as you said, it's a very, very hot race, and it wouldn't surprise me if Kiltilly Briggs ends up picking up all the experience this season and remains a novice for next season. Listen, I think he'll go and run a cracking race at Warwick and probably outrun his odds, but he's obviously got to step forward if he is to go and win it, and he might be one of those horses that ends up in a decent handicap off a nice mark with plenty of experience under his belt in time.
And presumably, if he outruns your expectations and does spoil the party, then could the RSA be a target if he really runs a big race?
Yeah, I think he'll end up having a load of entries at the festival. I think the Ultima he'll have an entry in the Ultima as well. And yeah, listen, let's take it race by race, but certainly he is a nice horse for the future.
Another one entered in a listed mare's bumper at Market Raisin is Rose O'Hara, who had a very promising debut at Ludlow. This looks again like a pretty hot contest, but the entry suggests that you can probably expect more to come from her.
I think so. Yeah, she was fourth in a race on her racecourse debut in a bumper at Ludlow. The first 3 all raced very prominently and down the inside. It was quite a big runner of field, and we were tapped out wide and towards the back of the field, and she's done very well from a very uncompromising position to go and finish fourth, staying on fourth all the way to the line. We've given her plenty of time to recover from that. She's a nice mare from a good family, and she promises to have a lot more to offer. Obviously, a step into listed company is a big step up in class at this stage of her career, but obviously if she were to finish in the first 3 and pick up that little bit of black type, that'd be great, because she's owned by some people that will end up breeding from her in the future as well. So the black type is what we would be after, but she's in at Lingfield as well next week, so we'll contemplate where we go, but certainly she's another nice young horse that we've got in the team.
We're recording this at 3:15 on Tuesday, so you've got a few more runners in the week as well, one at Plumpton, a couple at Bangor, and one at Sedgefield. Just to treat the listeners, anyone that people should just be having a look at in the morning of the race, or are we going to move straight on to the festival?
We run a horse called Tallow for Coal tomorrow down at Plumpton, and I like this chap actually. He's a nice horse. He won a point. He won a 4-year-old point over in Ireland in February last year, and he absolutely bolted up. He's by Arctic Cosmos, and he wouldn't be the most fashionable sire, so we picked him up, for a decent value, I think. And he was second at Utah the first time out over hurdles for us. I think he should step forward from that run, and he goes down to Plumpton. He's got to take on a horse of Gary Moore's that was rated 94 on the flat, which if that transfers its flat ability to hurdles, then he's probably going to take all the beating. But you don't see that many Galileos going straight out over jumps over 2.5 miles. So I think he's worth taking on, and he might be a bit of value.
There you go. So that's Tallow for Coal in the 1 o'clock at Plumpton tomorrow for those who've been straight onto this quick as a flash on Tuesday evening. We'll move on now to the Cheltenham Festival. This is mid-January. I think I can already feel in the few WhatsApp groups that I'm on, people starting to talk about their Cheltenham bets. People started to talk about their fancies. The oddschecker grids getting more and more popular around the festival. And we are talking here in this special to a festival winner. Present View, of course, won the Novices Handicap Chase a few years ago. So no one better placed to tell us what it means to a trainer. Just talk us through, firstly, I always personally think, when you're talking to a trainer who's won a handicap at Cheltenham, that's far more impressive than winning any other race, because firstly, you've got to get there. You've got to get there in good form. And then you've got so many other horses who've been plotted to get there too. So just tell us a story about that great day with Present View winning.
Well, very kind of you to say that winning a handicap is better than winning a festival. But listen, any race at the festival is very, very hard to win, isn't it? Obviously I was lucky enough to work for both Paul Nicholls and Nicky Henderson in the past, and for them to be churning out festival winners year in, year out is phenomenal, really, because every race at the festival is very hard to win. And I think Present View running at the festival was our third ever runner in the race at the meeting, so I say. So for him to go and win, I sort of thought life was easy then, and I've realised that actually it's it is quite. No, he was a lovely horse. He arrived to us. He was a bit of a jigsaw. Took a bit of working out, and he sort of ended up quite well handicapped over hurdles. He didn't win a novice hurdle, and he ended up being quite well handicapped. And when we sent him chasing, it proved the making of him. And obviously he progressed to go and win at the festival on the first day there. He won a race at Kempton. It's interesting how at the end of February, how many horses win at that meeting at Kempton and come out and win at the festival. It's obviously Kempton's sharp right-handed and Cheltenham's left-handed and undulating. But it's amazing how many horses come out of that Kempton meeting and go on and do well at Cheltenham. And he was one of those. We needed to go and win to get his mark up to get into the race. And so I told Brendan Powell, who was riding, make sure you win by 10 lengths. He won by, I think it was 12 or 13 lengths, and the handicap put us out of it. But thankfully, I had a chat with the handicapper, and he managed to. It was 11 pounds as opposed to 12, and we ended up winning the festival by half a length. So that phone call to the handicapper to drop us £1 was well worth.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I say it's more impressive. You're not, if you're blessed by winning a champion chase or a champion hurdle, you can blame it. You can say it's the horse. If you're winning a handicap at the festival by half length, having made a call to the handicapper, then I think all credit goes to you for that. And what about the buzz? The buzz on the day. I mean, watching the race, I watched it back this afternoon for my research, and you had the challenger up the rail. There was a steward's inquiry to try to get past, but you managed to just squeeze in front. And then, so I mean, what's it like watching your horse coming up the hill in front, and then the aftermath as well? You don't have to go into details about the celebrations, but just in short.
I think it's very hard to put it into words. The only way that I can really describe it, and the best way of describing it, is that Great British Racing, who was obviously the PR side of racing there at the time, they put a heart monitor on me for the race, and your maximum heart rate should be 220 less your age. So I think mine should have been I don't know what it was, 185 or whatever it was at the time. So my maximum should have been about 185. As Present View crossed the line, it was 193.
Wow.
So that puts it into perspective, really, doesn't it? It was a phenomenal feeling, and something that words cannot describe. It was a real thrill, ever since growing up watching Desert Orchid and Remittance Man and those horses, running around Cheltenham. All you'd ever dreamed of was riding at the festival, winning at the festival, training at the festival, and training a winner at the festival. And as I say, to do it with our third ever runner at the festival was just incredible. And something we want to try and replicate fairly soon if we can.
Fingers crossed 2021 is the year, and let's get into that now. Two horses currently holding entries. Of course, there will be more at the time, but we'll start with Gar Law, who won 3 races on the spin by a combined 27 lengths earlier in the year, then finished 10 lengths behind All Mankind, which of course is, no bad form whatsoever. That was at Sandown at the beginning of December when dropped back to 2 miles. Currently, Gar Law retains entries for the Marsh, the RSA and the Arkle. I'll let you tell us what the plan is at the moment between now and the festival.
So, as you rightly said, he was obviously a very good novice chaser through the early part of this year. It obviously helped that he was a 4-year-old and had a nice 4-year-old weight for age allowance, and we certainly utilised that in the early part of the year. He won a novice at Fontwell. He won a handicap down at Exeter, and then he won the Grade 2 Rising Stars at Wincanton. I thought that race at Wincanton was a mighty performance, because Hurricane Harvey, who was some 20 odd lengths back in second, ended up winning a Grade 2 up at Doncaster for 3 miles on his next start. So that was a mighty performance. And we then dropped back to 2 miles in the Henry VIII novice chase down at Sandown. We did that because we wanted to step him up into Grade 1 company, and that was the obvious race to go for. Stiff finish, softer ground, and I think it was the right thing to do. He's run a mighty race to go and finish third, but he did not have the pace to go and challenge All Mankind. All Mankind down over the railway fences was very quick, and it proved to me that 2 miles is not the thing to be is not the route to be progressing with him. He does need to go back up to 2.5. I think one day he'll even want 3 miles as well. So as far as the festival is concerned, we probably want to be looking at the Marsh or the RSA. The Marsh being the realistic option, really. I think on his next start, he's had a bit of a break since Sandown. It had 4 runs through the early part of the season, so I wanted to give him a little bit of a midwinter break, and so he's just been out in the field for 3 weeks through the latter part of December, and we've just got him back in now. He's done very well for that little break. But the plan is to go to Kempton for the Pendle Novice Chase, the Grade 2, there at the end of Feb. And as I say, that meeting does tend to produce plenty of festival winners. So a lot will depend on how we go in the Pendle as to where we go at the festival, but and also whether the Irish horses are allowed to come over. The race I could really see him doing very well in is the Grade 1 up at Aintree at the up at the Aintree Festival. So I suppose a lot will depend on Kempton, and also whether the Irish can come over as to which race we go for at the festival, or whether we think about Aintree afterwards. So a lot to be decided still.
It's not a great time to have a talented novice chaser, because you look at the Marsh and you've got Envoy Allen at the top of the market. You look at the RSA, you've got Monkfish, and then you look at the Arkle, and there's Shishkin sitting there. So there's no really easy option. I mean, when you've got a horse like Gar Law, where feasibly, you could run him in any of the 3 over all 3 distances, how much are you looking at those to take on, or is it a case you've just got to do what's best for the horse?
I think we've got to do what's best for the horse ultimately, and I think that although we'll put the entry in for the Arkle, I can't see him dropping back to 2 miles. But it would be foolish not to have that entry in there. Certainly 2.5 or 3 looks to be the route to go with him. I suppose a lot would depend on Kempton, as I say, and listen, if Envoy Allen can't come over from Ireland, then obviously the Marsh comes into consideration, but that all depends on COVID and Brexit, I think, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does, like most things at the moment, sadly. We'll move on now to Anything for Love, who's the other horse who retains an entry at the moment for the festival for the Mares Novice. She has won 2 races back in December in fine style at Lingfield and at Catterick. She looks like an exciting one, and a lot of people don't seem to be particularly enamoured by the Mares Novice, but for horses like Anything for Love, it's absolutely ideal.
Yeah, so she's assisted to Sizing John, who obviously won the Gold Cup several years ago. So she's a very nicely bred individual. Black Sam Bellamy. She was unbeaten in 2 bumpers last season. We were obviously thinking about the Aintree bumper with her, but obviously obviously racing stopped before the Entry Festival last year. So she was unbeaten in bumpers. She came out this year, first time out of the hurdle. She had a bit of an unlucky time of it, really, because the pin in Gavin Sheehan's stirrup came out before he'd even jumped the first. So poor Gavin sort of jumped round Utopster without any stirrups, and the mare finished 4th. Listen, it was a nice sort of school in public, as it were, because Gavin had no chance of winning the race, really. But she came out and then won, put things straight and won at Lingfield, and went up to Catterick and won with the penalty. She should really be unbeaten if you take into account that. So she's a talented mare. She's progressing. She's improving. She will improve for a step up in trip as well. I think we're going to go to. I think we're aiming to go to the Grade 2 Jane Seymour at Sandown with her in February. I've just put her in the 2.5 mares race at the festival. She'll be in the 2-mile novice at the festival as well. Depending on how we go in the Jane Seymour at Sandown will determine whether she goes to Cheltenham. She will want softer ground. That's the one thing. She does relish softer ground. So if we have a dry spring, then she won't be going to Aintree, I wouldn't have thought. So yeah, let's hope she can go and run well in the Jane Seymour and then on to Cheltenham.
And plenty others as well, who I'm sure you'll have an eye on for the festival. Chapman's Hype being one, Pisgah Pike being another. What are the aims with those two?
So Chapman's Hype, yeah, I mean he's a winning machine, really. He's
four from 5, wasn't it?
I think in total in his life, what is he, 7 from 14 or something like that, 7 from 12. He knows how to win races, and his run at Kelso under top weight was very impressive in a Class 2 at the back end of the summer. He does want fast ground, so certainly he won't be going to Cheltenham if it's soft, but Aintree might be more his bag, really, but obviously it depends on the weather. His performance at Kelso was very impressive because he broke the track record up there carrying top weight, and what is very impressive about that is on the back of the resumption of racing is that the jockeys haven't been using saunas. And something that many of your listeners might not know is that every jockey is carrying 2 pounds more than his allotted weight on the back of jockeys not having saunas. So not only was he carrying top weight, but he was carrying 2 pounds more than any other horse would have done over that distance in the past. So I think that was a mighty performance. But yeah, he does want fast ground. And
Pisgah Pike?
Pisgah Pike, again, he's benefited hugely from a wind operation in the summer, and he was unlucky not to win that listed race at Market Raisin. That listed first time in a handicap, but he rectified that and went and won nicely on his next start, and didn't have a huge amount of luck in running in the Jerry Fielding. I would have thought a nice race, something like the Scottish Champion Hurdle would probably be for him, or the race after the Grand National, the 2-mile handicap at Aintree, something along those kind of lines. So certainly, I would have thought there's a nice handicap in him before he goes novice chasing through the summer.
And we've spoken about the handicaps at Cheltenham. Any that you're kind of steering in that direction?
Well, obviously we've got Stony Mountain, who was he cast himself quite badly on his first start for us at Ludlow. That was a bit disappointing. Poor chap. He was off games for a month after that, but he's back in work again now. We might see if we can qualify him for the Pertemps. And then we've got horses like Monbeg Theatre that might rock up in a handicap at Cheltenham as well. He won. He was a very good hurdler. He was on the fringe of being a graded staying hurdler in his younger days. He's jumping fences a lot better now, so he might turn up in a handicap somewhere. He's just had his wind done and had a bit of a midwinter break as well. We've got Kiltilly Briggs that might end up in a handicap as well. Kiss will do nicely. I think he's a nicely handicapped horse. He's on the back of coming back from a leg injury, so I think he's one that could run in a handicap somewhere as well. So there's a few that Thomas McDonough, he won last time out. He might end up in the National Hunt 4 Mile Chase as well. So yeah, there's a few that might end up. As you say, it's early days, but there's a few that are heading that way. The Banner King Rebel's another one. He won.
He's had a funny season so far.
The Banner King Rebel.
Oh, because wasn't he the first time was the two runner race with the forward at the first, wasn't it? Or was that?
That was it. Yeah, he won his novice chase. That was a 40 grand bonus race, and he was the only horse to run.
How are you feeling when you saw it was just one? I mean, what was the trip? It was that was
2 miles. Yeah.
If over 2 miles, when you know, all you got to do is get round to get the bonus. It's all pretty almost more nerve wracking than watching a normal race.
Yeah, it was weird. So he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Well done." As he jumped the second, I was like, "God, we've got another 12 fences." And he did rub one down the far side. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Rub. It's pecked out on his head a little bit, but yeah, no, it was pretty nerve wracking. But he went back to Plumpton next time out for another bonus race. So I was thinking, if he can win 2 bonus races and win at the festival, does he double his bonus? But I don't think it works that way. Poor happy fellow.
Well, yeah, talking about races where you're a bit nervous watching them go around. And you mentioned the Aintree Festival a few times, but before we let you go, we're just going to ask about the Grand National, because I have a feeling the anticipation, assuming everything's okay for Aintree in April, the anticipation around the Grand National, given it'll be the first one in 2 years, will be even more than usual, even more than normal. And fingers crossed, there are at least some fans on the racecourse by mid-April. Have you got any that you're planning to send there for that race?
Yeah, well, Hogan's Heights, I should have mentioned. He's one that probably turn up in the cross country race at the festival. And he's very much on target for the Grand National. He won over the national fences in the Grand Sefton last December. Looked mightily impressive that day, and he was heading for the Grand National last season, when obviously that never took place. So this season we've started out and we're working back from the national. Really, he's got to qualify for it again by running over fences by the end of March. And so he's gonna his race over fences before the end of March is going to be the cross country race at the festival. We figured if it worked for Tiger Roll, it can work for Hogan's Heights. He had a school round there just in December, just gone, and absolutely loved it. So hopefully he can go to Cheltenham and then springboard onto the Grand National.
Hogan's Heights 50-1 currently for the Grand National. I have a feeling this will get a few more views and a few more listens if we get one of those festival winners up and then Hogan Heights wins the Grand National. How about that for 2021? Jamie, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. We really appreciate it, and wish you all the best of luck with all the runners that you mentioned here today and for the rest of the season.
That's very kind. Thanks, George.
If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to the Oddschecker podcast on all podcast platforms and subscribe to the Oddschecker YouTube channel as well. Loads of racing previews coming up over the next few weeks in the lead up to Cheltenham, and plenty else up there as well across all sports. Loads of betting content, and do also download the Oddschecker app for the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, and the very best tipsters indeed. So a few bits and bobs to do there. We'll be back very, very soon with racing previews and interviews.